Salons, take one. Go ahead and give me a clap to slate.
Hey guys, I'm so happy to be here. It's great to see all of your wonderful, beautiful faces. Thanks for hopping on today. This is Alexa. And before I get into overviewing the intuitive balayage, I just want to really quickly explain to you guys, what's going on, what you can expect from the demonstrations today, so that you can kind of get a feel for the class flow. So on the right side of Alexa's head, I have pre-done a portion of her balayage. I wanted you guys to see just the layout of depth and light that's placed into this intuitive balayage. And another thing that we're really going to focus on today, and this is where the term intuitive becomes really important to understand. My approach to balayage is heavily focused on customization. So anytime I have a client coming in or a model coming in, whoever it is that I'm working on, I approach it from a very intuitive place versus an analytical place. And what that does is it opens up the opportunity for me to really take a look at, for example, my client's facial features, her face shape, and complement where I'm placing the brightness of her application to truly complement that. Furthermore, when it comes to formulation, I really want to focus on the same things with formulation as well. So we're going to talk today about how to customize your toner formulas for different skin tones, for different eye colors, the variations of warmth and cool that you see. That's all going to be a part of the conversation, because to truly make a balayage intuitive, it's really important to factor in all of those things. This is also where, I get a lot of questions about pricing, and I think transitioning from somewhere like Cleveland, Ohio to LA, pricing has always been a big question and a heavy focus on the differences between the two. And one thing I always like to emphasize to colorists in my classes, it's really important to not undercharge for your services. You're all here in this class today because you're looking to elevate, you are looking to master your craft. And when you do something like an intuitive balayage on a client, you are doing something for them that is not only original to your artistry, but it's completely original and customized to that client. So the more we can communicate that to them through consultation, through our application of what we're doing, the more they'll understand and never question the prices that you're charging. So that's, if you can take anything away from today, it's charge for your worth. We are not just hairdressers, we are artists, we are chemists, we are psychologists sometimes, and we deserve to charge the prices that truly align with the profession that we've worked so hard to master. So that's a really important point for today. Okay, so our demonstration, the things that I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to focus on this side of her head since this is the undone area. And there's two different parts to a balayage that I'm really going to focus on. And it's going to be within the back and the front. So I'm going to approach the back first on Alexa, but we're going to talk about when and why you might start with one or the other based on your client situation. So taking a look at the back of Alexa's head, I'm going to flip her around and we'll bring back her pre-done side. So hopefully what you guys can see is on her pre-done side, she does have a little bit more diffused brightness. We wanted to make sure that we were adding a little bit more brightness toward the ends here to give her that extra pop. I also wanted to make sure that everything was super blended. And you guys can already see Alexa has a pretty dark natural starting level. So her natural level is honestly, I haven't analyzed her natural level in a while. It's pretty close to like a 5. She's got a pretty dark starting level. So that's another thing I'm going to focus on today is how to achieve a beautifully lifted balayage on someone who might have a darker starting level. We know that lighter starting levels are a little bit easier to lift through. There's less melanin in the hair. So what are the tips and tricks to getting like a really clean balayage on someone with darker hair? So to even this out, I'm going to do a technique called tip outs. If you guys have ever seen tip outs, this is essentially just a way to tackle the back and the ends. And it gives you the blended end result of a balayage, but the lift of a foil. We know that from a scientific and technical standpoint, foils are heat conductors, right? So they enhance lift. They really help to create that clean lift that we're looking for in a highlight. And that's sometimes one of the downsides to balayage, right? If you're painting the hair, freehand painting, you may be sacrificing some of the lift. So I tend to, especially with dark starting levels like this, almost always incorporate foils in my balayage applications. I do have head sheets for you guys. I'm not going to be able to show them on the screen today just for the purpose of our class recording. But if you guys would like to see the head sheets for the techniques that I'm executing, let the Alfaparf Australia team know and they will send you guys those slides so you can take a look at the head sheets and be able to reference those. But what's kind of cool about that, and what's actually a benefit of you not seeing the head sheets, is it's really going to push you and challenge you to be intuitive, to see the technique from a different perspective. I think head sheets kind of force us to be a little bit more analytical, right? We may see a head sheet, we may want to replicate that or be as close to that as possible. And that's very opposite of what today's class is about. The head sheet that I'll show you guys, or that's representing this technique, the Italian balayage, it's a technique that I've used for a ton of different looks. I also have some images in the slide deck that show you guys a bunch of different models that are wearing the same basic placement blueprint, but the end results are all totally different. So that's the other benefit to this technique, is you can really do a lot with it when you're customizing and being intuitive. All right, so I've just mixed up our BB Bleach High Lift 9. Okay, we all know High Lift 9. This is definitely one of the most popular bleaches here in the US. It's one of my favorites for doing these foilage techniques. The reason why I chose it is because Alexa, being my model a couple times, we have done a few base colors to help transition her balayage in the past. And we know that BB Bleach is designed to lift through artificial color. So for me, this is my go-to lightener because I know it's gonna help me lift through that artificial pigment. Additionally, because she's darker, it's gonna help, but when we choose lighteners, it's really important to remember that Easy Lift 7 is pretty strong. Like most of the time, Easy Lift 7 gets it done for me. The only times that I'm really reaching for High Lift 9 is, again, when I'm working on artificial color, or when the client's texture is really coarse. So it's actually, for me, more about texture, like the diameter of the hair strand, than it is the starting level. I have clients who have, for example, naturally curly hair, and their starting levels might be even darker than this. They might be a 1 or a 2. With those clients, if their texture is really fine and I want to preserve the integrity of their curl, I actually might use Easy Lift 7, especially if they don't have any previous color on their hair. So those are all, important things to factor in when you're choosing your lightener. And in order to truly be creative and intuitive, it's important that we master those fundamentals so that we can truly, customize and feel free to be creative. The first area I'm going to work on back here is going to be the nape hairline, and I just wanted to rotate Alexa really quick because I want to push her hair forward and I want to show you guys the area we're targeting. So do you see how much depth is existing right here over her shoulder? This is one of the things where I also love to work and do maximum impact with less work. Like, that's also totally a thing of mine. I'm always looking for the quickest and most efficient way to create the end results me and my clients are looking for. This area is major. When she flips her hair forward, if you see this depth here, if I place a foil then, right here, at her hairline, when she pushes forward, she has that immediate pop of brightness right over her shoulder. And that's with maybe 2 or 3 foils. So right there, that's a trick to tackle high impact in the back without having to go through the whole interior. You guys are gonna see, I'm not even gonna do a lot of work on the back of her hair. For me, the front is where I like to focus the predominance of my time. 1, because that's what the client's seeing, and 2, because I think that's where a lot of the customization comes in. So I am honestly a stylist and a colorist that really likes to focus on the front. But in the back, this little area here is a great place to kind of start. These first foils that are right back here, I'm gonna rotate you a little bit more, sorry. These first foils that are right back here, and I'm using, sorry, I don't think I finished mentioning this. I'm using High Lift 9 and a 20 volume Oxido. And I am just feathering this up off the scalp, but I'm tackling a lot of this depth that's right here to give her a nice bright pop of color. And for Alexa, you know, we've done this application a couple different times, so I don't really need to put a ton of foils here. If you are starting with a client who has never gotten this application, my magic number is 3. I like to do 3 foils in key areas like this. I may do a slice right at the hairline, and then maybe a couple really fine weaves to support it to really create that pop of brightness. But with Alexa, we're kind of approaching this as more of a touch-up. So that's another question I get asked pretty often is, you know, when you're touching up your client, when they're coming back for this color, how do you approach it? And for me, a lot of times it might be just doing 1 foil in this area and then letting this brightness that we've already done support it underneath. But that one is going to be great to kind of touch it up. So from here, once I've completed the hairline, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start taking horizontal sections. Now the reason why I'm taking horizontal sections in the back is going to be for a couple different reasons. The first is I like to color according to how the hair naturally falls, okay? Meaning based on how it's growing out of the head, I want to be able to really focus on my placement to be intuitive, not over directing it too much like crazy, not with all kinds of intense sections. It's the way the hair naturally falls. That's going to be the easiest way for me to kind of tackle it. Here you can see she's got a little bit of highlights from our last application to support that back foil, so I'm going to leave that. And now what I'm looking at here too, what's great about working in horizontal sections is I can be super visual now. So here we have a lot of depth. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on with this reapplication was just kind of brightening up her ends, evening them out. She did just get a pretty good haircut too, so some of the ends that were really grown out, maybe totally dark. So I want to focus on really filling out the blonde here at the bottom. And I'm going to do my first tip out foil here to do that. So it's essentially like a little baby slice. From here, I'm going to take my comb and I'm going to back comb. And if you guys are familiar with back combing at all as a technique, the further down you go with your comb to push it up, the more depth you're going to see permeating through that highlight, right? So if you want to see a blend of depth come through your highlight, start your back comb lower and push some of that depth up. If you want the opposite, let's say you want this to be pretty solid, her ends, she wants them maybe really solid blonde, and you just want to do a back comb for a little bit of a base or shadow group blend, start higher and back comb that way. Every little thing kind of matters when it comes to your placement. But here what I'm going to do, saturation is really important. So making sure that I'm really taking a section that's small enough to allow me to saturate fully. And then I'm kind of feathering my lightener up on one side just to create an added blended effect. One quick trick I want to show you guys too before I close this foil off. I do like to make sure I'm opening up the hair. So do you see how I was blending and pushing it up this way? That's a blending technique, but we have to make sure we're saturating in addition to blending, right? Because if we don't saturate up here, what's going to happen? We're going to see warmth. We're going to see brassiness. So to avoid that, you really want to make sure you're pulling this hair open and then blending it up. So get your lightener in there, really make sure it's saturated. And then from there, I'll fold up my foil this way. And from here, I'm just going to take pretty big sections throughout the back. And we're just going to do some touch-up detail work back here. Again, there doesn't need to be a lot of foils. The more foils you tip out and add throughout the bottom, obviously the lighter and brighter her ends will become with your application. And again, you'll notice every time I take her hair down, I go like this. I touch the hair, I move it. I may even take my fingers and shake it out a little bit. The reason why I'm doing that is because that's my I guess, trigger to remember to be intuitive. I'm gonna put purpose behind every foil that's placed in the head. I wanna look at the hair. I wanna see how it's falling. I wanna see where her previous highlights are. I wanna see where there's too much depth. And I'm gonna color according to that. So truly being intuitive. Another thing I like to speak to that's super important when it comes to being intuitive and doing an intuitive balayage is doing the haircut first. I'm a very, very strong, firm believer in the fact that your end results will be 10 times better if you built the frame of the house before you've done the interior, right? Like, we have to have some form of structure to understand how the color is gonna fall, how it's gonna lay, how it's gonna complement her. And in order to do that, it's really important to have the haircut done first. So that's definitely a huge takeaway and tip that I always like recommending as well. And I'm kind of noticing I'm a little bit far to the right on my screen. So in a second here, I'm gonna just shift Alexa and I over so you guys can kind of see us a little bit better. But here again, I'm doing my tip out. Oh, great. Never mind, we got a shift. I think that's pretty good, thank you. Got Kave on the camera, you guys. Thanks to Kave. All right, so let me turn her a little bit too so you can see what I'm doing. So again, I have my section here, fully saturating those ends, really making sure I'm pushing that product through because saturation is a really important foundational aspect of our intuitive balayage. I've feathered it up on one side. Now, I get a lot of questions about, you know, which side do I feather up on and how do I be intuitive with that aspect of the placement. With Alexa, we often like to keep her a little bit brighter around her face and then keep the interior, you know, have a little bit more depth there. However, she actually told me before this application, she was like, I've kind of been loving being a little bit darker. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna alternate. Previously, I may have cascaded my lightener up on the same side for every section so that it pushes the brightness towards the front and keeps her depth towards the back. But now, to bring about some sort of balance, I'm actually gonna do a combination. So this one, I've cascaded towards the front. My next tip out foil, I'm gonna cascade toward the other side. So you have kind of that variation to really create that blend. It's also why I know we always hear consultation is so important. I think we all hear that in classes and like we can kind of laugh and roll our eyes because we know this. We know that consultation is really important. But with intuitive balayage, you guys, consultation is extra important. I was talking to my younger brother the other day and he lives in Nashville. I don't know if anyone's ever been to Nashville, but it's a pretty cool city. There's a lot of cool things to do there. And he was talking about a speakeasy bar. And he was explaining to me what it was like at one of the bars to kind of consult with the bartender. And I'm sorry, there's a point to this story. I'm not totally dwindling off. We'll get there. The bartender, rather than them having any sort of preset menu, there was no preset menu, so you wouldn't look at something and pick out a drink. The bartender would actually sit down with you and ask you questions. Like, what is your preferred alcohol? Do you like sweet? Do you like sour? Do you want a lot? Do you want a little? Like, just very detailed questions about, you know, what his preference would be in his drink, and from there made him something completely custom. That's what this is. That's being intuitive, right? So it's so important for us to sit down with that client and ask them a ton of questions, like very detailed, intricate questions about their hair, about the end result they're looking for, all of those things. All right, so I'm doing something a little bit different here, so I'm gonna show you guys this. This is another technique that I like to do to, again, just get more impact with less work when it comes to tip outs. It also creates like a variation in the wideness of my highlights. Another benefit to coloring at a horizontal line is I can design how the hair falls with the highlights very specifically. Like what I do in my foil is how it's gonna fall. There's no guesswork. It's just, it is what it is. So one thing I've done here, if you guys can see, and I'll put a foil behind it so it's a little bit clearer. But I've basically taken that slice again, just like I did on my previous tip out highlights, but I've broken it. So I took a small piece out to break it, to create some variation horizontally, not just vertically. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you might do this on a client. I like to do this if I'm taking highlights out from a previous application. So let's say you don't want to overlap, you don't want to create integrity issues on hair that's already been highlighted. You can break your slice and do it this way. But for Alexa, this is also about preserving depth and creating variation in the wideness of her highlights. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go ahead and do my back comb pretty deep. And she does have, if you guys can see, some brightness on her ends on one side. So another thing I'm going to do, anytime you have previously lightened ends, you have a couple different options. If you want to lift it and clean it out a little bit, which with Alexa we will, you can use Easy Lift 7 and just 10 volume, really gentle lightener formulation just to kind of take this and clean it up. But then I'm going to use my High Lift 9 on the other side where she's darker. If the client's hair is very integrity challenged, let's say, and again, like I said on our last section, I'm going to progress it higher towards the interior on this section. And we're going to fully saturate this side with our High Lift 9. And then from here, I'm going to use my Easy Lift 7 on this side, a little bit lower, and more gentle where she was already blonde. Still feathering everything, but really opening up that hair to, again, push that product through and fully saturate.
See, we have quite a few questions. Is this a good time to start asking some questions?
Absolutely. You know what? I was just thinking about you, Lori. Feel free to jump in and ask me anytime. I'm seeing the chat box going off. I appreciate your guys' engagement a lot.
Okay, first question is, in the powder lightener that you have in the bowls, which peroxide strength was it? Because I was getting everybody to jump on and I actually missed that part. So what is in the bowl?
So sorry, yes, let's review formulas. So with both of my lightener formulas, actually with my High Lift 9 formula, it's High Lift 9 and 20 volume Oxido mixed 1 to 2. And then in my other bowl, it's our Easy Lift 7 mixed 1 to 2 with 10 volume. And that's going to be specifically for her hairline, which is really delicate. And then any previously blonde, I'm looking to clean out with my lightener. But great question.
Perfect. Then we have, the first question is, if I have a client that I want to change the hair color from a medium brown, so a level 7 on the roots, and quite blonde on the mid-lengths and ends, which is a level 9, and we're doing a balayage, but the client wants to have a violet mixture, what would be more suitable in that sense?
She wants a violet?
Yeah, a blonde, level 9 blonde on a balayage to violet, and I want to achieve a violet. What mixture would be more suitable? Obviously, we need to pre-lighten the hair till we get to a clean level 9.
Yes.
So what mixture or what formula would you recommend for that? I think that's what the question would be.
Yeah. So if you're looking to deposit violet on the hair, like it actually look violet and not blonde, there's a couple like really important technical things to consider here. So the first technical thing is exactly what you just said, Lori, clean lift. Definitely do a foil application. Definitely focus on fully saturating and taking really small sections. That's arguably maybe the most important part when you're trying to achieve violet. So lift. As far as the formula goes, I have been loving our UVs, our new UVs in colorware. I know we have like the 10 is actually really powerful. I don't know if you guys have played around with the 10 UV, but there's a ton of violet in that shade. So that mixed with maybe some ultraviolet pigments might do the job. I know it's at a level 10 and not a 9, but for me, it has a lot of punch to it. So oftentimes I like using that for a bit of over deposit. If not, A little trick that you can do is you can always drop it with a really deep level ash, or in this case you could even use like our 5 UV. Add like a dot of that to your formula. And what that's gonna do is, it's basically like adding a pigment, right? But it's in oxidative form. So it's giving you a little bit more durability in your formula, but it's giving you that intense violet pigment, because we know at deeper levels, there's automatically gonna be more blue. There's gonna be more violet, because that's what calibrates it to the deeper level. So I like to add just a drop of that deeper level so that it gives me that pigment, but it gives me the durability of an oxidative dye, which sometimes is beneficial on really porous hair that you just lifted, like I said.
Perfect, thank you. Then the next question we have from Rose is, how do you decide how much teasing you do? Because you were just doing that tease.
Yes, yeah. So for me, the back comb, and this is the tricky part about being intuitive, right? Because there is like a specific way to go about something like teasing when it comes to your balayage. I would say the best answer I can give is just know the more you back comb, the more depth you're gonna leave in the ends of the hair or in the highlight that you're creating. So oftentimes I'll refer back to when I mentioned how important that consultation is and how important it is to ask those really personal questions so you can create that totally signature cocktail or hair end result on your clients. One of those questions might be, do you want your ends to be solid blonde, or do you want to see some depth permeating through? If she wants her ends to be solid blonde, my back comb's gonna look really different. I'm definitely not gonna start from the bottom, because I know if I start from a lower area, more of that depth is going to exist on the ends, which is probably not what she wants, right? So I may be starting higher and just focus on maybe giving it three again, it's like my favorite number. 3 teases is a good amount, I think, to give you like enough support of where the hair is kind of pushed up. But if you want her ends to be more solid, start it higher. And if you want to see more depth, if you want to see some variation in her ends, a bit of her natural color permeating through, start a little bit lower. One of my other favorite balayage tricks, I have recently kind of circled back to our O, SSS, and EOC, and I've actually been using it quite a bit by itself on the mids and ends of clients who still have some depth throughout their ends, but maybe they want those ends to be more of like a light brown or a chocolate versus their dark level. So sometimes before I tone, that's another one of my favorite things to do with clients. Sorry, I'm diverting from the teasing question. But I like to apply it off the scalp just on those mids and ends because it lifts it so beautifully. It doesn't affect the highlight at all. It might actually lift it even a little bit further if I need that extra, little bit of support. But it creates this beautiful, beautiful mid-tone, like the perfect mid-tone for those ends, and it makes it a little bit softer when you leave that depth throughout their ends too, which is cool. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question. Sorry, I get very excited and I go off on tangents, so keep me on track.
Okay, it was really good, and I'm glad you brought up the SSS because it is one of my favourite colours that whenever I'm out in someone talking about it.
Yes.
So I'm glad you brought that up because it is one of my favourites.
Yes.
Okay, another question is, I always worry about combing out the back comb, even though I love the results it gives. So I will avoid it. Would love tips and tricks of how to comb it out without being rough with wet lightning.
Ooh, girl, I have all the tips for this. Because I get it. Oh my gosh, I get it. Like, there's nothing worse than your poor client having to sit in the chair for an hour as you detangle her hair. Like, that is, Alexa's laughing. But before I'm going to tell you my secret, my best favorite secret is the brush I have. This is the Ibiza detangling brush. Oh my gosh, I don't balayage without it. This is always traveling with me in my color kit. I educate with this, I take it to shows. But this is honestly one of the best brushes for detangling. I use it on straight hair, I use it on natural curl, I use it on really delicate hair. any canvas, this is like the holy grail to completing that. What I will also say really helps is post color when you're rinsing out your lightener, use our nutritive line. Nutritive provides an incredible amount of slip, and most of the time for me, my backcomb comes out within the shampoo. Like I don't even have to worry about taking it out. I'm glad you're nodding.
No, it's true.
It's
It doesn't hurt.
So if you use the nutritive line, honestly, the teasing comes out almost immediately in the shampoo. One last little tip to that I think is also really important is paying attention to the elevation of your section, okay? So what I mean by that, I'm gonna take my next section here. I'm gonna take out this top corner, and this is an important area of the application because we're getting to her crown where her head starts to round. Oh my God, did I just get kicked off? We'll be right back.
Did it kick you off?
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting a phone call. Do it again.
I don't know what that would have to do. Oh my God, my Wi-Fi cut out. Oops, monkey.
I'm gonna keep this rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Well, sorry about that, guys. Slight technical difficulty in a really great spot. We were on a roll there. But we'll circle back. Thanks for being patient while I got that back together. As I was saying, we're at the crown. So the crown is actually a point in the head where it rounds. So I mentioned before I like taking horizontal sections because it helps me really have some predictability because the hair is going to fall exactly how I'm laying and placing my color. Where the crown starts to exist, I actually start to round with my sections a little bit. Oh my God, I just got kicked off again. What is going on?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi isn't working for you.
Oh my God, this has literally never happened to me. They changed my password.
Right now? Because you're on it too much, or?
No, because I called them asking for the password.
Recording in progress.
Well, it's definitely not your internet. It looks as though the issue is on Cassie's side. So again, we're trying to reconnect it now, and we shouldn't be too long. Again, apologies.
It's definitely on my side. I'm so sorry, you guys. That should be the end of our technical issues. We knew there had to be a couple, so we got those out of the way. We're good to move forward. Okay, so rounding my sections, I'm taking out this top corner. Now, when it comes to, let's see, Lori, can you circle back and remind me what was the question that was asked before we got kicked off?
Absolutely. It was about brushing out. So once you've done the balayage and you've done all the teasing, brushing that out and which brush to use. Because as you mentioned the name of the brush, you know, the internet decided to.
Of course it did. All right, so let me circle back to the beginning of that question and we'll just transition back to the answers. So my holy grail solution to backcombing and kind of removing that is this Ibiza brush. It's fantastic. The brand is again Ibiza and it's the detangling brush. The second tip I gave, just to review, was also making sure that when you are rinsing out your color and post lightener that you're utilizing our nutritive system in Semi-Dolino. The benefit to that is it has so much slip that your backcombing should come out within the shampoo. You may not even need to brush. The third thing that I'm going to speak to that's really, really important is elevation when you're backcombing. So what I mean by elevation is where you're holding your section. Sorry, I just surprised myself with her hair. So if you're holding it high, if you're elevating that section and backcombing, that's going to make it 10 times more difficult to remove that backcomb. So what I want to focus on is really making sure that I'm holding it as close to zero elevation as I can, and I'm creating the back comb that I'm looking for. Then when I go to detangle her hair, I want to make sure I'm detangling at that same angle. So I want her sitting up by the shampoo bowl, and if I need to go back through and the nutritive shampoo didn't take out all the back combing, I want to detangle it at the same exact angle that I put the back comb in. Those things will make your life so much easier. It will make your clients so much happier. And it makes back combing not an issue, because I agree, it's one of the, I think it's become one of the foundational techniques that we all utilize on a regular basis in the salon for creating that beautiful balayage. But there's downsides to it. So for me, having the tools and just having those little tips has made it a lot easier to utilize that. Any other questions, Lori, before I'm going to transition into the front here in a minute.
Okay, I'm just going through the questions. Cassie, 1 second.
Sure, take your time. And you guys, while Lori's going through those questions, before I transition out of the back, this is a great opportunity to be intuitive as well. So I know kind of visually where my foils are is where we're going to see some brightness and blonde. And what I'm looking for now before I finish out the back and transition into the front are any holes, any areas where there's maybe too much depth, where it looks imbalanced. Again, this is also where it's so important to do the haircut first, because I can take a look at the hair, how it's falling, and make sure according to her layers, like she's got a beautiful highlight right here. That's great. That's going to take care of the crown. I don't need to do anything else there. But do you guys see how over here, there's still a little bit too much depth? And we definitely want to balance this out. I want to add one more highlight right here. And that's actually outside of the head sheet. That's something that's customized according to my client. So be really visual, be really intuitive, take a step back before you move on, take your time and make sure that you're filling out any holes and gaps to truly make that application custom.
Okay, Cassie, the thing was, there was a question that the client missed, the OOS tip.
Oh,
you
yeah.
just want to go through that again.
Absolutely. And you guys, I have some visuals to help kind of bring this to life that are in the slide package I put together for you. So again, if you'd like any of the model images that incorporate these techniques, both of the curly girls actually that are featured in that presentation all have this OOS trick. So you can see those images to kind of reference the end results. But essentially, you know, when we got to that OOS trick, I was talking about the ends, right? And balancing out when you do want to incorporate depth on the ends of your balayage with the highlights. Sometimes if your clients have a really dark starting level, that contrast can be a little bit too much. And we know that, you know, contrast is definitely on trend. But with balayage, we still like our end results to look blended and soft, at least to some capacity. So the OOS trick, I essentially use it by itself, mixed 1 to 2, usually with either 20 or 30 volume. I won't go any higher than that. I usually don't even go to 10 volume because it's usually not quite enough for this technique. But after I've highlighted the hair, when I'm rinsing it out the shampoo bowl before I tone, I'll apply OOS off the scalp from mids to ends. And what it does is it takes that really dark starting level and makes it like a beautiful mid-tone, like a brown or a chocolate. And it doesn't expose too much warmth either. So that's kind of the benefit of using nothing higher than 20 or 30 volume is I don't want it to transition to brassy. I just want it to shift the level. And it creates this perfect mid-tone. It's one of my favorite ways to use OOS.
Agreed. Totally agree with you. Yeah. And then there's a few questions here asking, how long do you allocate in salon, or when you're, you know, working a full day in salon? How long do you allocate to actually apply the full balayage process?
That's a great question, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how I've adjusted, because I think when I first started, and especially like moving and transitioning here to LA, One of my goals was to really build up my reputation, build up my clientele, so I was trying to fit in more people. And with that in mind, being the focus and the goal of what I was trying to achieve, I was trying to complete most of my balayage applications within an hour max. Aside from that, I'd be working in partials, I'd be working in retouches, focusing on less time per client. I'm at a point now where it's more important to me to spend more time with that client and charge more. So my clientele is smaller in number, but it's also because I'm balancing that with other things in my life, and it was a career goal of mine to get to that point, to be able to charge more and work on less people. So now I'm at a point where I actually allow 1.5 to 2 hours for application, which sounds like a lot, but it gives me the opportunity to really customize, to be present with that client, and because we also have a couple products that are making the toning process such a quick and easy aspect, it gives me more flexibility to spend more time with the client. So that's, again, the long-winded answer to that question.
Thank you. It wasn't that long-winded.
Sometimes it feels like I'm long-winded. Okay, you guys, so we'll circle back to more questions in a second here. Lori, I'm going to transition to the front.
Yeah, absolutely, hon. Go for it.
Cool. All right, so now that we're transitioning to the front, again, I would say most of the time, the front is what I like to focus on with balayage. So tip outs are really great to help touch up the back, but the front is what the client sees. You know, this is where we really want to focus on customization, creating those beautiful end results that are going to wow her when she looks at herself in the mirror when you're done with her. So my sectioning is honestly just going from the apex of the head down. I am just behind the ear, if you guys can see. My sectionings are always very simple for my applications. I like to keep that aspect simple so I can really detail and be intricate on what I'm doing throughout the interior. Now, taking a look at her pre-done side, isn't she so pretty? I always can't get over it with Alexa. But a couple things that we focus on here with Alexa's application. So you guys can see she's got her beautiful face frame piece in the front. So I know that that's something I want to maintain. She has loved being a little bit darker, so we don't want to go too intense with this. We did the bright, bold face frame trend. I think we've transitioned out of that together, and she's now ready to just be a little bit more natural. So I'm going to show you guys again, kind of like I did in that back hairline, how to touch that up with just one foil throughout the hairline. And then I'm going to show you guys a couple interior tricks that help you balance having brightness but still the correct amount of depth on the interior, because we know these highlights can't pop without depth existing. So it's super important to not over highlight, to not over balayage. We need to leave some depth, and I have like the perfect placement trick for that I'll show you. And yeah, everything is just really soft. She doesn't have solid blonde ends. She has some depth permeating through, which is really nice. We're gonna maintain that. So we may tip a few things out to just brighten up what she's got going on here, to kind of match it, to clean it up. But for the most part, we're just gonna really touch this up to make it, to kind of finesse it. So there's a few key important areas that I always focus on anytime I'm face framing. The first is at the temple. Pretty common area to start your face frame, right? We want to make sure when she pulls her hair back, she has the detail she wants, whether that's depth or brightness. And again, that's a really important question to ask. When you pull your hair back, what do you want to see? Do you want to be seen as a brunette or a blonde when you wear your hair back? That's going to totally dictate how I tackle this hairline here. The second area of focus is going to be the recession area. So Alexa really doesn't have a receding hairline, and I would never say that out loud to a client. I'm saying that among hairdresser peers, so don't call it the recession area for a client. But it's where the recession hits, right? So Alexa honestly has a great hairline. It's not super easy to see, but what's challenging a lot of times with balayage is it's easy for us to leave like a black hole right at the recession because it's such vellus hair. So I'm actually going to tackle that using a pivotal foil design. I'm going to pivot my foils from the recession, which is a great place to also make sure I'm incorporating the correct amount of depth and light, but still creating some detail in that recession area. The next area of focus is just right at this face frame detail, so creating that money piece that we all like to see in the front, that bright pop of blonde. And then finally her part line detail. So how do I want the part line to fall? How do I want her roots to look at her profile, right where she parts her hair? So those are the main areas that I really focus on when I'm face framing. So to start, we're gonna start at the temple. Because Alexa is so dark and we wanna keep this off the scalp, I am going to go ahead and just manually carve out some of her small little baby hairs. We don't need to highlight those. With brunettes, especially people that want their balayage to look off the scalp, you don't need to detail those. So, you know, with a blonde, someone who wants to look really blonde up the hairline, we would definitely want to incorporate those, but in Alexa's case, we're good. So from there, what I'm looking for now is length. I want to make sure I'm getting a little bit of length in this next section I'm taking. And you have a couple different options as far as how you design these foils. You could do a slice, which would create a really bright pop of color at the temple. What I'm going to do with Alexa is I'm going to shatter it. So I'm going to do a really, really fine weave, which is again going to help to just diffuse this, give her a little bit of highlight at the front. And I'm feathering that lightener up. I'm not going all the way up to the scalp, just feathering to create that diffusion, and then I'll fold it up. Now again, right at the temple area here, what I typically do with clients, my magic number tends to be 3. So a lot of times with a client who needs a little bit more of a touch-up or who wants to be a little bit brighter, I may do 3 foils here, and I like to keep the spacing pretty minimal. So I may do another one directly behind it, and again, shatter out that weave, create that beautiful blended effect, and then a third with just a little bit more spacing so that there's added depth. But with Alexa, to touch it up, and this is again the benefit of doing a client that you've already done, she has some brightness throughout the ends here that supports this frame, so I don't need to do 3 foils. I can just do 1 and move on. So that's my one area of focus there. We're gonna move into this recession area. This is one of my favorite parts of my application, so I'm super excited to show it to you guys. So when it comes to face framing for me, I'm all about looking for connection points. I wanna make sure I'm connecting this group of foils down here with the next area of the head that I'm working with. And I've found, again, that this interior area is where I tend to overfoil the most, or I overthink it the most because I'm not totally sure how to handle this interior. So this pivotal placement is ideal. Now, what I've done is I've taken a diagonal down section, again, letting that recession point be my guide. That's gonna be my pivot point. So if you've ever done pivotal foil placement, you wanna pick one point for all of your foils to pivot off from. And that recession is gonna be my area. So my first foil is gonna come down. My second foil is gonna be more horizontal, so actually it'll be like right along the parietal ridge. And then the third foil, what's really great about this third foil is it comes up. So that's also gonna be a great connection piece to the part line detail. And it's also leaving, think about it, when we put depth, or I'm sorry, when we go diagonal up here, it's leaving a really nice space for depth here, and guess what that's gonna do? It's gonna allow this piece to pop. It allows that face frame to really exist the way we want it to. So first one's diagonal down, second one is more horizontal and parallel to the parietal ridge, and then the third is diagonal up. Now, when I'm working on the interior of these foils, I do like to design it a pretty specific way. I'll do something called a brightening weave, which is essentially a combination of a weave and a slice in one foil. And kind of like how in the back, how we were alternating which side we would cascade the lightener higher, the same concept is going to exist here. So let me show you the brightening weave, and then we'll talk about how we change it up to create blend and variation. So with a brightening weave, I'm going to weave one side, and then I'm coming in and slicing the opposite side. So let me put a foil behind it so you guys can really see what that looks like. But it's basically one half is designed as a weave, the other half is designed as a slice. So if you guys can see that a little bit better, This front area here is sliced. It's a really fine slice. Again, we can still see through it, so we're still gonna be able to saturate, but it's gonna provide a little bit bolder variation of color. And then on the interior here, we have a weave. So on the interior, the benefit of having more of that micro weave, that shatter, is it leaves more depth on the interior, which is again, one of our goals, right? We wanna make sure we're leaving enough depth on the interior to allow our highlights to pop. And with Alexa, again, I may alternate where I put my brightness and where I put my depth. I'm again feathering up my lightener, not going all the way up to the scalp, just feathering it up so that she has a really nice variation and blend. And then we're gonna lock it in. So I'm gonna do that same design on my next foil, but I'm gonna flip it. Okay, so we said this one was gonna be more parallel to the part line. So it's horizontally, or I'm sorry, parallel to the parietal ridge, which is where the side of our head curves, which is a great place to have a little bit of variation. So on this foil, I'm actually going to create that slice in the back, and I'm gonna weave towards the front. Okay, really fine section still, allowing for, again, optimal saturation, but that flip, what it's doing is it's creating a really nice blend of highlight and depth and where you're having it. In previous applications for Alexa, when we consulted, if she would have told me again today she wants to be really bright towards her face, guess what I would have done? I would have made sure all of them had that slice in the front and the weave on the back interior. But because we want to create that blend, I'm going to go ahead and do a combination. Feathering it up, saturating those ends, locking it in. And now we're getting to this last foil. So I mentioned this last foil is one of my favorites because it's a connection foil. So from here, my connection foil, we have these two that have really helped us to tackle the interior. This last one is gonna, again, start from that recession point, but it's gonna come up. And it's taking us right to her part line. If you guys can see, this diagonal is hitting maybe about a ½ inch from her part line. So now I have a really nice blend of depth right here that's gonna support and fall behind her front face frame piece to make it pop. But I'm connecting my highlights towards the interior, so I don't have to do any more than these three. Pivotal foil placement is the bomb. Like anytime you can use pivotal foil placement to do less work and get more impact, you should. Like I'm always, when I'm developing techniques, I'm always looking for ways I can infuse pivotal foil placement. I think it's so underrated, and it's one of the things that as a colorist can totally help you save your application time, even cut it in half if you use it strategically and correctly. So with this one, I'm going to do the weave on the interior and then the slice towards the front again. Beautiful. Okay. So with those three foils, we've just tackled the whole interior of the front side. Like, amazing. Major time saver. Okay. So now the last two areas of focus in this front face frame are going to be this front bright, beautiful, muddy piece that we love, and then her part line detail. So again, you can see Alexa already has some beautiful highlights from her previous application that are gonna support whatever I do at the hairline. Because of that, I'm just gonna put one foil here. If she wanted a face frame, like if she didn't have this right here, and we were doing a face frame like on a brand new canvas, 3 is the magic number. And typically in this front face frame, don't be afraid to slice it. Like do 3 slices, because it's gonna give you the most impact. But here, what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna touch up this first one, so it brings her blonde up a little bit higher to create kind of that nice curtained effect from top to bottom, so she has like a really nice blend in her face frame to the amount of blonde or the density of blonde she has back here. So we're again just connecting, just touching it up. But if you were doing this fresh, do 3. Sorry, I was just gonna come in your face for a second. Fully saturating, taking it all the way up, pushing these blonde ends to the side. And I do like to do one final fold up here just so it's out of the client's face. And keeps it nice and nice. Nice and nice. All right, the last area of focus is going to be the part line. Now, at the part line, this is a pretty important area, right? Like this is where our clients are truly going to see, you know, how their balayage falls with the profile. So I like to color according to the part line. I know a lot of colorists may go and do like that mohawk strip and go back with your foil placements. I like to color parallel to the part line because of, again, that predictability factor. I want to see, like I want to design it exactly how I'm going to see it. And to do that, I want to do it according to how the hair falls. With Alexa, and again, you can do this a couple different ways. If your clients wanted to see some really definitive lines of color on the side, I would maybe do a really strong weave. So carving out some very specific pieces to exist at her part line. If your client wants to be really blonde, I may start with a microweave and shatter it out, follow it up with a slice so she gets that bright pop, and then do another weave to finish it. Because Alexa wants to keep some of the depth, I don't know if I'm going to do anything with the part line. And this is very visual, sorry that was a build-up. But do you guys kind of see how it's falling right now? Like she's got a really, really beautiful blend vertically from her natural color to her previous highlights. If anything, I think what I'm going to look for is take a look at her ends and see if there's any holes that I want to tip out. And I may tip out just this support piece right here. Maybe not. This one right here, this is the one. See, this is what I mean by visual and intuitive. Like I'm looking at it, I'm picking up the hair, I'm playing around with it, changing my mind. I mean, it's important to be super visual with balayage because if you just kind of mindlessly take the hair and put it in a foil and move on, which trust me, I've been there, we've all been there. Like it's very easy to get stuck in a routine and kind of feel like you're doing the same thing. Clients notice when you're like looking at it and being visual and taking a look in the mirror and laying the hair down and trying things out and adjusting it. Don't be afraid to do that and talk about that with them. Explain what you're looking at, explain what you're trying to create. Because again, it's just a great way to ensure that you're justifying your prices and can charge more for your expertise because at the end of the day, that's what it is. So I just did a slight back comb, more of a broody back comb here. If you guys noticed, I started it a little bit higher. And that's going to be all I'm going to do with the part line for Alexa. A little bit different. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got her balayage, her intuitive balayage applied. Like I said, we've pre-done this side so you guys can see the end results. I did in fact base her, so one of my favorite tools to use for basing is actually our Colorwear Cream. For Alexa, I did our 7, just our 7 natural straight up. I mixed it 1 to 2 with 5 volume. And I just like to do a progressive combed down base to create that nice blend. I have some visuals to support that as well on my Instagram, so if you guys wanted to see that and have a little bit more detail on that, let me know. I'm happy to send you more information on the base comb down and what that looks like. And for her toner, I used something really new and exciting. I don't know if you guys have heard about it yet, and Lori, if I should pause and answer some questions before I sneak peek this product, we can totally do that, but we're getting to toning.
Go for teaser of what's about to hit the Australian shores in end of October, early November. So yeah, floor's all yours. Go for it.
Okay, all right. I have been very lucky to get my hands on the new Colorwear Gloss Toner. You guys, this has been a product that in the US market, liquid toners are so popular. And a couple of the reasons why are because they make toning easy, they make it simple. But staying true to the Alfaparf Milano way, we wanted to make sure that we were providing all of our advanced technologies, all of our innovation within this product, and we've done that. It's incredible. The hair feels amazing. You have so much shine. The combability is incredible. Alexa is actually wearing a brand new shade that launched in Colorwear Gloss Toner. It's our 1032. So I know we don't have a 1032 in our Colorwear Cream, but 1032, which is very similar to if you guys have used our beige glacé. It very much reminds me of that shade. It's got that beautiful gold base with that violet reflection. I'm holding the 1022. That's not the 1032, but just wanted to show you the bottles, show you the packaging. I was lucky to get my hands on some final packaging, but this is such a new innovative product. We're really excited about it. One of my favorite ways to use this in balayage and what we did with Alexa is I love to base with cream and then tone with the liquid. So you can mix this 1 to 2, put it in a bottle, very easily spray it on, emulsify, and your client's done. You can flash tone in 10 minutes. You can fully tone in another 20. There's just so many new exciting options in toning with the Colorwear Gloss Toner. So really excited to share that with you guys. One of the most common questions I get about Colorwear Gloss Toner is, when and why would I use a demi versus a cream? Like, when is the situation good? When is it more suitable to use the cream? One thing I will tell you is if you notice on our bottles, I know it's kind of hard to see in the screen, but there's actually a 0. So there's a 0 in front of the number, and that 0 represents the fact that these tones are truly iridescent. So I would say in terms of a technical when and why, that's the most important thing to remember. If you're looking for a sheer iridescent finish, something that's not going to be so opaque, use the Colorwear Gloss Toner. If you're looking for a more opaque finish, more of that solid deposit, if you're looking to blend gray, that's where you need to make sure you're using the cream. These are also initially launching in levels 8 through 10, so I think anytime I'm using darker shades or for basing again, that's when I also like to use the cream. And then also I would say, honestly, when it comes to blonde shade selection, I think that our Colorwear Gloss Toner, again, there's a couple new shades launching in there that have really helped me with blonde formulation. There's a 1004, which for me, like I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about trends with David, I need a pop of warmth that I like to add in my formula. One of my favorite toners that I've used with our cream might be like a combination of our 10-1 with a splash of 844, so that I'm getting that control, that cool control, but I'm getting that extra pop of warmth to make sure I'm not losing reflection. The 1004 in our Colorwear Gloss Toner is like the perfect shade for that. So I also think in terms of like truly customizing your blonde toners, there's a lot of very thoughtful options that won't take over your formula in the Colorwear Gloss Toner. So that's kind of another thing I like to think about, especially when you're working on porous blondes that suck up that color. And with cream, we know it does have more of an opaque finish, so they will definitely absorb it more. But that's really exciting. If you guys have any other questions on the cream versus liquid, I can totally get into that too.
I have a question for you, because I know clients are probably thinking about it, because we just launched Colourwear, the new Colourwear generation last year, and we're having some great responses with it, and it's absolutely phenomenal for us. So looking at the cream versus the gloss, you've explained the differences, but what is it that you find that working with the two products together in a salon really helps? Because I know that the gloss toners, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a great deal of shades, but for us to have both in the back room, what are some advantages of doing that?
I mean, it is absolutely what you need to create an efficient, perfect balayage end result. Like I was already in the salon before we launched our Colorware Gloss Toner, I was already doing basing and toning with our cream, which is great, but what's really made a huge difference is having the ability to flash tone with the Colorware Gloss Toner. I mentioned this before, but you can flash tone on damp hair too. I don't think I mentioned this, but this is a damp application in the bottle, super quick and easy. It takes my toning application and it cuts it in half at least. But that process time of 10 minutes, being able to have all of the dye precursors oxidize in that 10 minutes so I'm getting the true shade and I'm not losing durability, is major. I think having both in your salon when it comes to creating that perfect balayage end result is gonna not only help us, but it's gonna help us elevate and be able to spend more time on things like placement, on things like being intuitive, on truly customizing what you're doing to that client as well.
Yeah. Great, thank you. That was really good. Now there's a lot more questions coming through. I knew the clients
I knew there
start
would
to
be.
ask, which is great.
Well, really quick too, so I'm trying to see where we're at with time.
Yeah.
Where are we at with time, Lori? we're
We have
close.
probably another 10, 15 minutes. so-
Okay, all right, good. Well, before I have a mannequin. I had one other demo I wanted to show you guys, so I'm gonna bring her out while we're segueing through questions. But before that, I just wanted to transition Alexa out and tell her thank you. We're gonna get her processed and finished up. I will be definitely posting her pictures to my Instagram so you guys can see her end results. I'll also send them to the Alfaparf Australia team so that they have them and can send them to you guys at your convenience and when you guys want them. And I'll include all of her formulas as well so you can kind of see what that looks like. But just wanted to say thank you to Alexa. Cool. And I'm going to grab my mannequin really quick.
Okay, cool. So there was a few questions because obviously now the gloss toners are coming across at, towards the end of the year for us. But you mentioned putting them in an applicator bottle. Can the clients put them in the mousse maker, or is it better in an applicator bottle? And I'm going to you for this because I haven't even had the pleasure of touching the product.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, most people have it. I don't know how I got so lucky to get a few shades, to be honest with you. This is a real treat. So yes, okay, definitely I would say use the applicator bottle, not the mousse maker. Part of the benefits to utilizing the Colorware Gloss Toner is the fact that in a liquid, it makes absorption really quick and easy. And I think in the mousse maker, you might actually have to use a little bit more because the viscosity changes so much to actually get the application on the hair. So I would definitely recommend sticking to the bottle applicator. It's super easy.
All right, and then just a final question. With the pigments, you can still add that in, create more palette of colors with the gloss toners.
I think, and what I was trying to say is when it comes to blondes, it can get tricky formulating a good balance of warm and cool without over depositing. And I think because the cream is more opaque, you definitely have to be a little bit more careful when you're adding pops of warmth or when you're adding pops of depth into your formula. With the Colorware Gloss Toner, there's a really nice variety of warm shades that are at that lighter level, which gives me the opportunity to do that without worrying about like over depositing or over adding in my formula. So like the 1004 is probably one of my new favorite shades in the Colorware Gloss Toner family. And there's just, I mean, even the 1032 is a good example too. It's just a beautifully balanced beige. And I think these new additions to really creating that customized blonde end result for you guys is just gonna elevate your blonding game that much further.
Okay. Final question for you, then I'll let you do that
Yep.
mannequin. Because obviously we don't have the 10.32 in the gloss toners, what would be, if the clients wanted to do this technique and tone to get that same result as the model, what color formula would you recommend?
So I would recommend 10 Beige Glacé. So the 10 BG, which actually launched in our On Life collection, if you guys remember the On Life shades. The 10 Beige Glacé, it's very, very similar to that finish. It's just, again, a beautifully balanced, warm shade, which is nice.
Okay, over to you now, no more questions.
Awesome. No, that was great. That was fantastic. And you guys, I know we're getting to the back half of our class, so any other questions you have, please put them in the chat and we'll try to circle back to them before we leave today. But the last thing I really wanted to show you, we talked about face framing, we talked about tackling balayage in the back, but we didn't talk about fringe. And I think it's really important to talk about how to tackle a face frame with a fringe. I already shared with you how incredibly excited I get about pivotal foil placements, and this is just another great example of where I use pivots and I love them with a fringe. Especially a curly fringe here. So with my beautiful model, she definitely kind of needs a trim. Her fringe is a little bit long and in her face. But when it comes to adjusting and taking on the fringe, and I've already actually done this so you can see kind of the beautiful delineation of color it creates. What I like to do is I like to section out the fringe at this top point, and I'll pivot my foils down from here. I don't even have to do a lot. We can do, like maybe I'll show you just a few so you can see kind of how I do this. But pivotal placement in the fringe is, I think, one of the best ways to create a beautiful frame. And what I like to do, kind of like I did on the interior pivot, is I'll still use those brightening weaves that I was showcasing to you guys. But what I'll do, depending on the type of fringe you have, if you want to create a nice weight line of blonde on the underneath perimeter of that fringe, do your weave at the top and then your slice towards the bottom. And it creates this beautiful weight line of brightness that still has that face framing effect that our clients are looking for, but it diffuses throughout the fringe, so you really get that balance, which is fantastic. So, and again, kind of the same concept here as we were working on the interior. If you wanted to really create a blended end result and you didn't want that blonde weight line at the fringe, you can alternate where you put your sliced portion of your highlight with where you put your weaved highlight. It just totally depends on what you're trying to achieve. Nice to have that option, but all in all, pivotal placement here is like my go-to. It's my favorite. One of the things that I think is really nice and clear when I'm doing a pivotal foil placement and a fringe like this is those mid triangles. I didn't mention this before on Alexa, but this is one of my favorite tips if you've never done a pivotal foil placement. What you want to focus on, and kind of think of it like cutting a pie or cutting a pizza. I don't know if you guys are sweet or savory people. Either one is just fine. But what you want to make sure of is that this interior, this dividing section is a triangle. The shape needs to be a triangle. So it needs to be skinnier towards the top of where your pivot point exists, and then wider towards the bottom. That's what will ensure that you're creating a pivot from that point. I know if you've never done a pivotal placement, like I remember the first time I did pivotal foils, I very quickly turned parallel. Like it was so easy for me to just start doing parallels on accident, and it was because I wasn't focusing on these triangles. So it's a great, great tip. And again, I'll weave this towards the top. And creating that blonde weight line at the bottom of the fringe. And again, what a great way to create a lot of impact with not a lot of foils, not a lot of work. In her fringe, I may need a total of, let's see, 1, 2, I could probably do this in 4 foils. Like when you do pivotal foil placement, you get so much impact for just a little amount of foils. That's, I think, one of the biggest key benefits to it. So I'll just roll through and do these last 2 sections so you guys can see it. But Lori, do we have any other questions that we want to circle back to while I'm completing this demo?
Yes, there's a few. So
okay.
When you're doing, so we go back to Alexa's balayage technique.
Yes.
A lot of clients are asking, is this a technique that's safe for the client to either wear with waves or just dead straight? Because they're finding that, you know, when you do a balayage, it looks great when it's got waves, but then when you do it straight, it just looks like blocks. So
oh my gosh, totally. That's a valid question. I also, as an educator, take that as a challenge because you know your end results are good when your clients can wear it both straight and wavy. So that's an incredibly valid question. What I will tell you is, as an educator and as a technique developer for Alfaparf Milano, one of the things I'm really proud of is I thoroughly test all of my techniques on a variety of textures and canvases. When I was developing the Italian balayage, which I just showed you guys, and when I was focusing on being really intuitive with it, another thing I wanted to focus on was making sure it was transferable, making sure that you could wear it both straight and wavy, and not just on hair like Alexa's, but on tight curls. Clients that have really, really kinky curl patterns, like making sure that these techniques were wearable for those people. And that's something I'm really proud of. But to I guess further adjust and share with you the end results, maybe we'll finish Alexa and we'll smooth her out today so you guys can see both sides. Maybe at least we have one side finished so we can show you it straight so you can see. But yes.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah,
absolutely.
Be great. And it makes a lot of sense what you're saying too, because here in Australia, the curl is coming back quite heavily. So no one's really wearing their hair dead straight that much, and the waves there. But then we've got a lot of clients that are embracing their natural curl. So I thought it was a good question from the clients.
Love it.
To sort of ask that as well.
Love it.
I think that's it. If there's any other questions online and anyone would like to ask anything, it's just pop a question in the chat function. But Cassie, I think that's it for the questions right now.
Okay, great. That's great. I have one other thing I want to talk about before I say goodbye to you guys. But to wrap up this demo, I know it was quick, but I just thought I get a lot of questions as an educator about how to tackle a fringe. So I think it's kind of nice to see, you know, this is the fanning effect that pivotal foils give you. Again, you don't need a ton, you get a lot of impact, but doing this pivotal foil placement is by far my favorite way to tackle fringe. She already has some blonde on the perimeter to accent and kind of connect her front fringe area to the rest of her balayage. But if you didn't have this blonde, I would tip out some of these ends. So just like we did with Alexa with the back comb, tip a few of these perimeter pieces out to truly connect it to everything and kind of bring it all together. But that's everything for my beautiful second model here. She's not as pretty as Alexa, not as fun, but we appreciate her. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about before I say bye to you guys involves kind of an advanced intuitive formulation tip. I mentioned I like to spend more time with clients. I like to really ask a lot of questions during the consultation. And one of the things that I focus on is helping them identify their skin tone. Now, I think a lot of times as a makeup artist, you know, that's something that makeup artists do quite a bit and they're familiar with. But as hairdressers and colorists, I think we should be just as familiar with that concept. So I like to share the way I determine the undertone of the skin. And the way I do this is taking a look at the inner wrist of the client. The reason why I do the inner wrist, and this is not a Cassie original, this has been around for a long time. I just like to refresh it in my courses. This is the most undisrupted part of your skin. So it helps us see the true undertone that our clients naturally have within the palette of their skin. So when I'm looking at the inner wrist, what I'm taking a look at is the vein. To the human eye, our veins are going to appear blue through our skin, naturally. What you can think of the skin as right here is kind of like a filter, right? So when there's a filter over anything, it changes the color. If I'm looking at the inner wrist and I'm seeing that the veins are a little bit more green, we can use the color wheel exercise for this. We know that blue plus what makes green, and that's yellow. So my client, if I'm seeing more green, is going to have a little bit more of that yellow undertone. So her natural palette preference is going to be warmer. So I might want to infuse warmth in her formula to complement what she naturally has. On the opposite end, if you're seeing more of a violet shade, that might mean that her undertone is more pink, because we know that pink and blue make violet, or red in that case. But if she has a cooler palette, I want to incorporate more cooler tones with her formula. So that's just one way that I like to, again, make sure that I'm being really advanced in my consultation, engaging with that client, and just letting them know how deep the customization goes, like how deep the intuitive application and the intuitive philosophy goes with the entire experience that they're having with me in the chair. But as far as class content goes, that was everything that I had for you guys. I see my good friend Anthony popping up on screen, so I'm going to pass it to him in a second. But before I do, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for having me today. It was truly an honor being here with you guys, getting to spend time with the Australia family. Balayage is something I'm really passionate about. This concept is something I've worked really hard on. So to be able to share it with you and to spend this time with you has been really special to me. So thank you so much for having me and for being here. I appreciate you. I respect hairdressers so much, and I can't wait to see you guys again in the future.
Thanks, Kat.